It is 10 a.m. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. College hoops action on Tuesday. Number 5 Tennessee fell at number 15 Kentucky 75-64 as the Wildcats complete the regular season sweep of the Vols. Tennessee only hit 3 of 18 three-point attempts as Kentucky went 50% from beyond the arc. Vanderbilt fell to top-ranked Auburn at Memorial Gym, outscored in the second half 46-36 to fall 80-68 at Memorial Gym. More coaching staff movement in the NFL as the Saints officially announced Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore as the next head coach in New Orleans. Former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley is reportedly the favorite to be Moore's defensive coordinator. And former Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick has a new landing spot with the Miami Dolphins as senior passing game coordinator. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Not an ideal circumstance last night for Tennessee Volunteers fans. Swept this season by Kentucky last night, 75-64. Kentucky improves to 17-7 overall, 6-5 in the SEC, now 7-1. Lucas, is Mark Pope's Kentucky Wildcats team against top 15 teams this year. That's crazy. Vols dropped to 20-5, 7-5 in the conference, and it's, really as simple as Kentucky got off to a fast start. Excellent from three again. I thought Tennessee came out in the second half and kept it close, but Kentucky consistently hitting from range kept them at a reasonable enough difference. And then by the time the Vols took their second lead of the game late with about 5 minutes to go, they just go on this scoring drought and Kentucky pulls away pretty comfortably. Not an ideal circumstance. Very rare to see a sweep in the Kentucky-Tennessee men's basketball series, but Kentucky gets the best of the Vols last night.
17-4 run to close the game for Kentucky, but Tennessee did almost everything it needed to do to win this game except hit some open threes, which was the exact same story the first time around. Different path to getting there. They didn't attempt 45 in this game. They were 3 of 18. Nobody, not named Igor Milicic Jr., hit a three-pointer in this game for Tennessee. Just not going to win any games with Zakai Ziegler, Chaz Lanier, and Jordan Gainey going over from the three-point line. And that's the difference, man. Tennessee, in these two games, Tennessee is 14 of 63 from three-point land. 22%. Kentucky, 12 of 24 in both games. 50%. That's a 30-point difference. And Tennessee has lost by a combined 16 points in these two games. So there it is. There's your difference. And Kentucky seems to be Tennessee's kryptonite this season.
Ended a 3-game winning streak for the Vols, who next have Vanderbilt in Knoxville, and that's going to be an interesting game. Vandy loses to Auburn last night as well, but Vanderbilt obviously got the better of Tennessee earlier in this season, so worth keeping an eye on that game later in the week. Only scored, Tennessee did 26 in the first half. Again, Lucas talked about their struggles from three in particular, and Kentucky's offense, man, it just kind of felt like it was in a flow state. How well they were reading back cuts, how well they were finishing at the basket. It was a cleaner executed game, again, by Mark Pope's team. And I know that they're not perfect, and I know that they've got some defensive flaws, and I don't know what their ceiling is going to be when we get to conference tournament time or finally around to March. We're 1 month away, exactly, from the SEC tournament coming back to town, correct?
We are exactly 1 month away. That's right. March 12th. Is the first day of the SEC tournament at Bridgestone Arena. We will be there. 104.5 The Zone will be there.
We sure will. And that's the first day of NFL free agency, so not the NFL just refusing to let anybody have any oxygen whatsoever, but, of course, that will be an exciting time, too.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of things going on as we broadcast from Bridgestone Arena. We always look forward to those shows each and every year. But to the point of Kentucky's offense, I just felt that they were in a better rhythm. And to the credit of Kentucky's defense, I thought they kept the Vols from really getting into any kind of true rhythm defensively. It was pretty suffocating defense last night from Kentucky, and that's not something that they've been known to do at a high level throughout the course of the season.
I mean, Tennessee did a nice job getting back into this thing. They trailed by double digits late in the first half. They were able to cut it to a 7-point Kentucky lead. And, I mean, they hit, 8 of their first 9 shots out of halftime, Tennessee did. And they were, like you said, up with 4 or 5 minutes to go. And you're thinking, how are they leading right now with the way the 3-point numbers are so skewed in Kentucky's favor? But just didn't make the winning plays down the stretch. The 2 Kentucky games this year have been the 2 most frustrating games of the season for Tennessee. I don't think it's particularly close. The Vanderbilt game was tough, but exciting game, back and forth, big rivalry, great crowd, and Vanderbilt just, made a couple of winning plays. The Auburn game was tough. You just had a shot not go in at the buzzer. You did everything else right for the most part in that game. But the 2 Kentucky games, man, they talk about being there for the taking and just unable to put the ball in the basket. It is so strange that Kentucky is the one team that seems to just break Tennessee's 3-point defense. Tennessee's got the number 1 3-point defense in the SEC this year.
Not against the Wildcats.
It's crazy. I mean, and look, they find themselves open looks, and Tennessee struggled to close out shooters at several points in this game. But then you've also got some of these just step-back threes that are just getting drilled in the face of a Chaz Lanier contest, and you just shrug your shoulders and say, okay, I mean, I don't know what you can do there. So, yeah, they just have Tennessee's number this year. We'll see if they get any sort of rematch in the postseason.
Quick reminder that we're going to the Combine. Well, I'm going to the Combine. I'm going to leave Jackson and Lucas here while I go to the Combine, and we're going to have great coverage from Indianapolis, courtesy of Wholesale Supply. You can listen in just 2 weeks from now. The Combine will be upon us as analysts, coaches, GMs from around the league talk about the upcoming draft class, as well as hearing from the prospects themselves. For more information on our coverage from Indianapolis, visit 1045thezone.com today. So Vandy up next at home for Tennessee. Vandy coming off a loss of their own where they were playing Auburn pretty tightly throughout the course of last night. I don't know how much were you going back and forth between the game. I kind of just left it on the Tennessee game.
Yeah, I did a little bit. I mean, Vandy got into a 13-0 hole in this thing and then did a good job of cutting the Auburn lead to 2 at halftime and at some point taking a lead in the second half. But, yeah, Auburn just too good. Too good to lose back-to-back games in SEC play.
Have you looked at the end of Vanderbilt's regular season schedule? It's hellacious.
Yeah.
You're at Tennessee, at Kentucky, home for Ole Miss, at A&M, home for Missouri. That's 5 straight ranked teams, currently ranked teams. And then you finish with Arkansas at home and on the road at Georgia before we get into conference tournament stuff. This is, it kind of puts a bow on what we felt like was going to be the toughest part of Tennessee's schedule, though I don't know how much easier things are going to get down the stretch. We've seen how competitive the SEC is. I know it's a tired talking point, but it holds true each and every night. This is a must-win game for both teams.
Absolutely. Vanderbilt is obviously no sure thing to make the NCAA tournament, sitting there at 17-8 at the moment. What's their best win? Probably Tennessee.
It is Tennessee.
At home. So they're going to have to string together some wins in that stretch. Like you said, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ole Miss, A&M, Mizzou, and then the regular season finale against the Georgia team that theoretically could also be in desperation mode, needing a quality win to get into the NCAA tournament. So if the SEC is truly going to get 13 teams into the NCAA tournament, which is pretty lofty, it would smash any previous record held by any major conference. But if the SEC is going to do that, Vanderbilt obviously has to get in. So they need to collect some quality wins along the way. Yeah, it's no easy path for Vandy.
What, no whining cats back there today? Because
no, they weren't little kitties last night.
They got the better of you again?
No, they were...
very chesty about Kentucky basketball was Jackson, leading into both games. Very, very free in his usage of that drop back there, Ron Slay's kitty cat drop.
Tough scene.
It's a good drop. I love the drop, but no, they were not little bitty kitty cats last night. Credit where it's due.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't like giving credit to Kentucky basketball. I was very happy. Yeah, yes, I was very wrong about Mark Pope. I pointed at them and laughed. Pointed at them, and then I have Mike Woodson. Just can't even be bothered to field
I
Tom.
saw some Indiana head coaching hot board rumors start. Brad Stevens.
Oh.
For IU basketball.
No,
What?
Lucas doesn't understand.
My goal is for Bucks hopes to get up high and then just be shattered when they hire somebody worse than Mike Woodson.
All right. The
basketball icon.
The best comparison. Jackson's very happy with the amount of praise that he got for bothering me with his Mike Woodson stuff last week. Tennessee football, rather, for the longest before it started to regain relevance, and Indiana basketball are kind of the same thing.
Yeah, there are a lot of parallels.
Your John Gruden is my Brad Stevens.
So
this is every year.
There is a contingent of Indiana fans that believe that Brad Stevens would give up running the Boston Celtics.
Right. That's right.
To coach the Indiana Hoosiers.
What is the...
Okay, that's correct.
You can throw money at him.
What's
every
the tie
year.
to Indiana?
What's the tie?
Yeah, Brad Stevens.
He's an Indiana fan.
Did he go to Indiana?
No.
He is from Indiana.
He is from Indiana. He's an Indiana fan. He was at Butler.
Yeah, obviously that's where he made his name.
Great success. Then went on to coach the Celtics. Now he's running the Celtics. And sure, he'd leave in a heartbeat to go run the Indiana Hoosiers.
An NBA champion. But I respect it. I just want Chris Beard. I just want to move on with I want to get Chris Beard and I want to move on with my life.
Where is the IU private jet today?
Today?
Yes.
Probably puttering on its way back from an upset win over Michigan State. Eat it, Izzo. I can't have any joy at this point, just knowing I'm bleeding out the clock with my lame duck coach.
Didn't Indiana just get a huge win?
Yeah, Michigan State.
He just said that.
or I'm sorry, but not just the win, but what did it prevent Tom Izzo from doing?
Oh, I don't know.
So Tom Izzo is on the brink of breaking Bob Knight's record.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
For Big Ten basketball wins. Yeah, I saw this headline today. So Indiana,
I said, eat it, Izzo,
beat Michigan State to keep Tom Izzo at bay a little bit. You're not breaking Bob's record against us. He is tied with Bob Knight.
Eventually,
of course it is. But I do love that Indiana kind of stepped up. He's tied with Bob Knight, 353 conference wins. So his next one will break Bob Knight's record. Indiana did not allow him, despite being an 11.5-point dog, did not allow Izzo to break Bobby Knight's record against them. I can respect that.
At risk of turning this into a basketball program because people are just draft thirsty, draft drunk at any given point, with all the different prospect information that we will or will not get in the next 2 weeks before the Combine. They've been playing better lately, which does not make me feel overwhelmed.
Last four in?
And coaching for his job.
No, watch this. They'll make the tournament. He'll come back, and I'll need to be put on a self-harm list for the foreseeable future. I don't want. We can't even entertain the thought. Now, what we can entertain is that we have an announcement at 11 o'clock today, and we're very excited about that. We're going to make you wait. So the chat coming in here, giving the announcement, many people are guessing that it's Lucas's announcement for the voice of the Tennessee Titans.
It's not that.
Could be. Actually.
Way to ruin the bit. We could have dragged that out for 45 more minutes.
Is it?
I don't know. Apparently not. Now, one thing off the board. What else could we possibly have?
Maybe we're playing mind games.
Me and Lucas's final coup.
Oh, you think I'm getting voted off the island today?
Yes.
That's probably what the audience is hoping for.
We're actually going to have Jeff Probst come in, Sam Phelan help facilitate it.
Well, again, maybe that's the case. You'll have to tune in at 11 o'clock.
Wait to snuff your torch.
To find out, 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. We're going to take a look at the Titans' 2024 offseason additions. Now, they got the general manager fired in some form or fashion, but how many of these pieces and parts can contribute moving forward? And just generally, how did they do relative to expectation last year? I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We're fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, the best hot chicken in the world. HattieB.com for more information. You can download the Hattie B's app. Lunch in not too distant future. Be thinking about it. You can download the app. You can mobile order your Hattie B's. You can check out any of their Middle Tennessee locations. If you listen to us in Texas, they've got spots in Austin and Dallas. If you listen to us in Las Vegas, they've got spots there too. Atlanta as well. All over the country.
Birmingham.
Nationwide phenomenon. I always forget Birmingham.
You don't have to, there's been a Hattie B's for a while in downtown Birmingham. You don't have to wait for lunch if you're around Franklin, too. If you swing by the factory at Franklin. Been open since 7 a.m.
Not too late.
Or the airport, correct?
The
That's
airport,
correct.
Hattie B's also serves breakfasts. Good looking out. Got to be prepared. Titans. They thought they were prepared for a more competitive season heading into 2024. Now, we don't have to relitigate the results. We know didn't go well. But they went out and did a great deal of work in the personnel acquisition department. They spent at the top of free agency at multiple positions for Tier 2 wide receiver, for corner, for center, running back, off-ball linebacker. Draft, obviously, you know, they went trenches, got J.C. Latham anchoring the left side, right to left tackle, ended up making the transition, we won't say seamlessly, but did a pretty good job for a first-round pick relative to expectation. You got Tavondre Sweat. You've got guys like Cedric Gray running around out there, or really not running around out there. You've got guys like Jarvis Brownlee forced into action based on a couple of acquisitions that didn't have their health in their favor this year in Cheeto Awuzie and Legarius Sneed, and it ultimately did not do enough for Rand Carthon, the general manager, the last person with final say of the roster, to keep his job. That also includes the 2023 draft, which has Peter Skoronski, Will Levis, Tajay Spears, Josh Wiley, the fifth-round tight end, and Colton Dowell as a part of it. So in the 2 years of personnel acquisition, because a lot of those 2023 free agents were one-year deals, the guy that wasn't like Andre Dillard was only here for a year before he got cut, and you looked at them coming into 2024 and you said, okay, makes sense on paper. And it did make sense on paper. And then the thing didn't come to fruition, and it ended up being 3-14. There's a million different reasons why it landed at 3-14. There's a bunch of different reasons why Rand Carthon's not the GM here anymore. And now they have to figure out how much of what's left as a part of that roster acquisition or personnel acquisition process can help them moving forward into the future. So let's take a look at the players that were acquired in 2024, both draft and free agency. I guess we'll start free agency and go draft in sequential order and talk about how these players performed relative to expectation. Where do you want to start? Is there a player you want to start with in particular?
Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley on a 4-year, $92 million contract, caught 4 touchdowns last year, had 64 receptions for 1,017 yards. He had an average yards per reception of 15.9. Did Calvin Ridley meet, fall short of, or exceed expectations? That's the category that's the way that we're categorizing these things today. Calvin Ridley, big ticket item, wide receiver.
In 2024, I'm going to say fell short of, because there are very few players on this offense that I think you could say met or exceeded expectations in a 3-14 season. A lot of that was not in Calvin Ridley's control, and he did have a 1,000-yard season, and you can count on 2 hands the amount of wide receivers in the Titans era that have had 1,000-yard seasons. Not amount of 1,000-yard seasons, but amount of different players. And Ridley is one of those. And Ridley can help them moving forward, and it's a move they had to make, and it's a move, if you had to go back in hindsight, you would say, yeah, they would have to make that move again, even knowing the results. But I still say fell short of because of the early season struggles, the drops early on, and just in general, the offensive shortcomings as a whole.
Credited with 8 drops last year, Calvin Ridley. Most of them in the first half of the season. He had, 6 drops in the first half of the season and then 2 in the second half of the season. So he got better.
Yep.
The quarterback situation in Tennessee did not get better. Calvin Ridley, again, scoring not a part of what Calvin Ridley brought to the table this year, and they had a bunch of different issues as far as what went wrong in the red zone and were the correct decisions being made as far as play calling. Obviously, Will Levis notably had some misses in the red zone that were highlighted where he just didn't see open receivers based on the path or the progression that he was supposed to go through. Calvin Ridley, to me, met expectations because despite everything, bad offensive line play, bad quarterback play, questionable offensive coaching decisions that were sprinkled in. I won't say, defined their season with Brian Callahan in the first-time head coach and sideline play caller role, but I don't think it overwhelmingly helped a bunch of people either. Didn't hurt everything every week, but it was a talking point. I'm going to say that Calvin Ridley met expectations. I would like for him to be better. I would like for him to not have slow starts. I would like for the Titans to not have slow starts as often as they do. And specific to the drops, you're paid to catch the football, catch the football. He understands this. We understand this. The Titans understand this. I thought that how for the personality type, and again, I'm just getting to know him because it's only been a year that I've gotten to cover him, but for the personality type that he is, I thought he held himself together pretty well.
Yeah, he was good. He was fine.
For 3-14, for as taxing as that can be, for the kind of questions that were being lobbed his way, and specifically times that we would question, with him, whether he was living up to the contract, and he would have some moments where he got a bit upset about that specifically, but I thought he was a pretty good soldier. Statistically, the drops kind of are a black mark on what he was able to produce, but on the whole, he still produced.
He did, but what were the expectations?
For me, that Calvin Ridley was a top of tier 2 wide receiver. And that would be complimentary in a world where DeAndre Hopkins existed, and I didn't have high hopes for the Treylon Burks experience, but I didn't think they'd stick with him as long as they did. I also thought Tyler Boyd would be better. Tyler Boyd fell more short of my expectations for him coming into the season than Calvin Ridley did. Calvin Ridley, I thought, was, at times a part of the offensive problem, but very rarely the biggest offensive problem on the field. Now, I know that's a tough way to kind of grade.
Well, no, but that's it's what makes this discussion difficult, because you're right, Tyler Boyd did fall short of expectations. I contend that Tyler Boyd and the type of player he is was not conducive to the shortcomings of this offense, right? What we heard from Brian Callahan talking about with Easton Freeze on A to Z Sports, the type of quarterback Will Levis is, deep drop, trying to utilize the big arm, comeback routes, deep post routes, things that they kind of tried to work for him, but you also need good pass protection in order to lean into those strengths. The Titans did not have good pass protection last year. And Tyler Boyd being that go-to option for the quick hit, chain-moving offense, Titans were anything but that in 2024. A lot of that had to do with the strengths, really more the weaknesses of the quarterback in Will Levis. So how do you factor in all of these surrounding circumstances when we're talking about somebody falling short of meeting or exceeding expectations? Because, yeah, if you told anybody when they signed him, Calvin Ridley would be a 1,000-yard season, would have a 1,000-yard season, you say, well, yeah, that's the expectation. But then the context of the quarterback situation makes it slightly more impressive that he had a 1,000-yard season. But he had a slow start out of the gates and dealt with drops early. Like you said, it took until the 7th game of the year for him to have over 100 yards in a game. But for Tyler Boyd, the production was hardly there. I also don't know that he got much of an opportunity to flex what he is as a player.
That's probably fair context to an extent, but I also didn't think Tyler Boyd wasn't breaking open within their offense on a regular basis. There were not glaring examples of Tyler Boyd being wide open in the offense so often and Will Levis just missing him. Again, we don't know progressions. We don't know what they're coached on specifically on any given play. Play calling is hard to criticize. I think it's really impossible to criticize in an educated fashion if you're not in the room. But Tyler Boyd, regardless of it, did not live up to expectation with Will Levis or Mason Rudolph, who played a chunk of these games with Tyler Boyd in the lineup, 39 catches, 390 yards, 0 touchdowns.
I think Ridley was fine, right? But I think you needed better than fine. And a lot of it, again, is not on Calvin Ridley.
So again,
it's
to me,
still part of the
I
end
don't want
product.
to spend 10 minutes on this because we've got a bunch of different players we got to talk about. Calvin Ridley, to me, met expectations. DeLucas fell short of expectations. We're both in agreement that Tyler Boyd fell short of expectations. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, moving on. Tony Pollard. 1,000-yard season, 5 touchdowns, 2 fumbles specifically. He averaged 4.2 yards per attempt and had 260 rushing attempts, 310 total snaps this season. Career highs in a lot of different categories for Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard met, fell short of, or exceeded expectations. To me, he exceeded.
Yeah, I think exceeded. There was a long stretch where he was the best thing they had. They had to rely on Tony Pollard. They had to rely on the run game. And he just continued to step up at every turn. He had a 1,000-yard season. He missed a game and still hit a career high in rushing and in carries. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say he exceeded expectations.
Lloyd Cushenberry. Lloyd Cushenberry tore his Achilles. He appeared in 8 games for the Titans this season. He allowed 14 total pressures, 13 hurries, 1 quarterback hit, 0 sacks allowed. Injury has to factor in here. He got the most guaranteed money a center's ever got in history. Titans desperately needed one. No reason to really nitpick the signing outright. But did he meet, fall short of, or exceed expectations? When he was out there, I thought he met expectations. Yeah. And then he stopped being out there because he popped his Achilles, and that's a very difficult situation for him to have to now bounce back from, and we'll see what the ripple effect of it was. But for 8 games, Lloyd Cushenberry, juice was worth the squeeze.
Yeah, 100%.
Mason Rudolph. 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 1,530 yards passing. He completed 64% of his passes. He appeared in 7 total games. 8 games, 8 games did he appear in, Mason Rudolph, including the split duty situation in Houston in Week 18. Did Mason Rudolph meet, fall short of, or exceed expectations?
Well, if the expectations were what he was in Pittsburgh, a quarterback that could help keep your head above the water, then he fell short of them. But, again,
he had a better team in Pittsburgh.
Exactly. Context around it. He was never brought in here to be the starting quarterback. He was brought in here to be the backup and surrounded by a much worse situation, like you said. So, again, in this offense, almost nobody met or exceeded expectations.
Agreed.
So it's hard to say that he met expectations.
I kind of think he did. I mean,
but there's an asterisk on it for me. This was not a Pittsburgh situation where he was set up for success.
The circumstance he was dropped into was not ideal. It's not like Pittsburgh had a perfect roster in 2023, but they were a better roster. He was able to manage the situation better with a better roster.
Yeah, 2 of your 3 wins were with him playing quarterback.
So him being a product of the circumstances around him, though, is meeting my expectations. Like Mason Rudolph was pretty parallel with what his surrounding circumstance was, and that was insufficient. But to me, that's what the backup quarterback is. He's not going to elevate you necessarily. He did turn the ball over at a greater rate than we're accustomed to seeing or would like a backup quarterback to. But again, context matters. I thought Mason Rudolph met expectations. Sebastian Joseph Day.
I thought he met expectations.
I agree. Came in this year on a 1-year deal. He's a former team captain. I thought he was a good locker room presence on the whole. Had 10 hurries, 3 quarterback hits, 3 sacks, 16 total pressures on the season. Did Sebastian Joseph Day as a starter, sometimes rotational piece. We'll call him a starter for the most part, because you had Jeff, you had Sweat, and you had Sebastian Joseph Day if you were playing more often than not with 3 down defensive linemen. Thought he was good. I consider bringing him back. And, they could certainly do worse up front than Sebastian Joseph Day. You understand that they had a couple more depth pieces, like a Marlon Davidson, who obviously didn't get to the regular season to be able to make an impact. So we'll see what happens there. Kenneth Murray, 3-year deal, Significant guaranteed money for Kenneth Murray, a starter before he was put on injured reserve after week 16. In terms of pass rush, what he brought to the table, he had 11 total pressures, 4 sacks, 2 hits, and 5 hurries. He had 71 total tackles last year. And just looking at the Pro Football Focus grades, again, may not be how the coaching staff has him graded out, but his coverage grades were the biggest spot where he popped up red on a frequent basis. He was a tough matchup, did not match up well specifically with tight ends in coverage, seemed to get lost very often, whether or not that was a product of miscommunications with the system, other players around him, how much was specifically on Kenneth Murray, I don't think we're qualified necessarily to say, but on the whole, relative to the contract, he fell short of my I didn't have high expectations for Kenneth Murray. I would say that I kind of got what I expected with him. And I wish that they wouldn't have invested that much money in an off-ball linebacker this past offseason. I think that's kind of the hallmark for selective spending in free agency. Did you really need the Kenneth Murray thing?
Well, it was a huge need. I mean, if Kenneth Murray is not playing for the Titans,
again, it's a need. But Garrett Wallow was going to start before he tore his biceps. You know what I'm saying?
Right, but. Then what happened? He tore his bicep. Cedric Gray, what happened? He didn't play until what, week 12?
No, I get what you're saying.
I mean, who would have started at inside linebacker if not for Kenneth Murray? I understand the deal. They overpaid him. They overpaid him, for sure. But we also were under the assumption that, hey, what did you call it? You put a...
Oh, the we suck luxury tax.
You put a tag on that.
Mm-hmm.
So... It's hard for me to go back.
But I'm not saying you have to capitulate to every player as a part of the we suck luxury tax.
That was one of the biggest needs on the roster.
Off-ball linebacker is not a premium position. That guaranteed money, anywhere around the league, that was one of the more questionable contracts, and it did not pay itself out. Not high expectations. I still think he fell short.
No, I agree he fell short, but it's hard for me to bemoan the move when you look at the other options that you would have had to play there if he wasn't here with all the injuries that happened. You're talking about Jack Gibbons and Otis Reese,
who I thought played pretty well until he hurt his ankle. Again, Garrett Wallow was on the roster. He got hurt. Gifford had good defensive snaps in there. They all cost a fraction of what Kenneth Murray did. And I'm not saying that you can just grab a linebacker and throw them in there at any given point, but it's a bad deal.
I know. They needed talented players. He's a talented player. And they went and got him. Still fell short of expectations.
Easy. He's a talented athlete.
He's a first-round pick. He's a talented
Okay, Lucas, there's a difference between having athletic traits and being a good football player. Kenneth Murray is a talented athlete that sometimes has moments where he looks like a good football player. So is Andre Dillard. I'm not saying that he's Dillard, but I'm saying that that's not the same.
Yeah.
You're equating them.
But that is something that, was this roster completely devoid of talented athletes at that position? Yes.
Sure.
100%.
But I'm saying that you don't have to go out and overspend for a talented athlete if you can make it work with a lot of different pieces like I just named that aren't getting the kind of guaranteed money that Kenneth Murray is. Let's finish this off with L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie, who I think we would both say fell short of expectations. They didn't play a lot of football. Obviously, Sneed ended on IR. Cheeto got, 3 games into the regular season before he was placed on a lengthy injured reserve stint after missing a good deal of training camp. Guaranteed money, certainly a third-round pick involved in the acquisition of L'Jarius Sneed. Both fell short of expectations, yes?
Yes.
Okay. We can talk more about the draft class later because that's specific to the free agent and trade class because L'Jarius Sneed wasn't a free agent. But on the whole, you understand why they're talking about at least a philosophical approach of selectively approaching free agency. Last year was not selective. We get that they had a million different needs and they weren't going to be able to draft all these different players.
But we know now more than ever, not just with the Titans, but in this city, it's hard to build a team in one offseason through free agency. Titans tried it. Preds tried it with big money moves, and both fell flat on their face.
That's crazy.
So we definitely know that now more than ever.
615-737-1045 is the number. We'll do some SEC observations. Take your phone calls next.
So an updated look at the SEC men's basketball standings after last night's games. Some key results, obviously Tennessee losing at Kentucky. By the way, Vols got Kentucky the first time when they did not have Lamont Butler, Kirk Risa, or Andrew Carr. Kentucky got the win. Last night, Wildcats had Andrew Carr back in the lineup and Lamont Butler, but he gets hurt, re-aggravates the shoulder, misses about the last 6 minutes of the game, and Tennessee still unable to take advantage. Kobe Brea hitting step-back threes in Jemai Mashak's face, and the Wildcats just have Tennessee's number in 2025.
That Lamont Butler injury was weird because it didn't, again, you have no idea what happened on any given play, but the way that he fell and just kind of it looked like he lightly landed on his elbow. I'm like, oh, he just hit his funny bone. Like, that's enough to, make anybody react. And then he went into the locker room. I was like, oh, that's more significant.
Yeah, that's going to be an injury to just monitor for Kentucky down the stretch here. They go to Texas on Saturday. Texas, who, by the way, lost by a large margin to Alabama. Alabama is rolling right now, 103-80, and there is a showdown brewing in Tuscaloosa Saturday between number 1 Auburn and number 2 Alabama. Both are red hot right now. Right now, the two best teams in the SEC, and it's hard to have any argument otherwise. Games happening tonight. Number 19 Ole Miss is at South Carolina, who is still looking for its first win in conference play. Oklahoma is at number 21 Missouri, and LSU visits Arkansas. Both teams in desperate need of a conference win. So Auburn at the top of the SEC standings at 10-1. Bama second at 10-1. Florida is 8-3. Texas A&M is 8-3. Currently, that is your top 4. If the season were to end today, those would be your top 4 seeds going into the SEC tournament. Ole Miss at 7-4. Missouri at 6-4. Tennessee at 7-5. Still ahead of Kentucky, who does have a game in hand at 6-5. Joe Lunardi updated his latest breakdowns for the seed projections for the NCAA tournament, and the 1 seed looks slightly more distant for Tennessee after last night's loss. He currently has the Vols as a number 4 overall seed. Tennessee would have to go on quite the run here in this backstretch to get its first 1 seed in program history. And I heard Grant Ramey of On3 Sports talking about this with Ramon, Kayla, and Will this morning. I think people kind of wave that off a little bit with the nature of the tournament, the importance of having a 1 seed versus a 2 seed versus a 3 seed. And I get it. It's very scattershot. You have no idea what kind of bracket you're going to end up in. But
a lot of times we end up talking about, did this 1 seed get a fair shake? Or
right.
Who got the easiest
all the time.
path? All these different
It's a crapshoot. You have no idea what kind of path you're going to get. But
sure.
Grant was talking about it this morning. Tennessee getting a 1 seed would have maybe propelled them to the Final Four last year because you wouldn't have had Zach Edey standing in your way in Purdue. So, Vols in a bit of a hole in that regard, but I'm more concerned right now with the top 4 seed in the SEC, especially with the state of the conference this year. And Tennessee, like you said, turns around to host Vanderbilt, trying to get revenge from the loss at Memorial Gym a few weeks ago, this coming Saturday in Knoxville. But Vols got to string together some wins again. That loss last night ended a 3-game win streak for Tennessee, and they got to start another one to get back into that push for a top 4 seed, because there is separation at the very top with Auburn and Alabama. Those are going to be tough to catch. Yeah. Seems unlikely that either Auburn or Alabama will drop 4 conference losses between now and the end of the season. So Florida and Texas A&M are kind of who has the target on their backs, so to speak, in terms of the top 4 seed in the SEC. Tennessee has already played Florida twice. They split the series. They still go to Texas A&M. That is next Saturday. So Tennessee will not have a midweek game next week. They'll play Vanderbilt at home Saturday and then visit Texas A&M on the 22nd.
Number 8 currently,
yes.
Texas A&M. So another ranked opponent.
Yeah, they're playing well.
That's kind of what last night was to me. It was an opportunity for Tennessee to create separation in a very, very crowded SEC. And as you mentioned, decent separation for Auburn and Alabama at the top. But we're still looking for who's going to come out of that in the 3rd best position ahead of the conference tournament, and Tennessee had an opportunity to at least try and create that margin. Wasn't able to do it. Didn't play well enough, didn't hit enough open threes against a Kentucky team that again hit 50% of their threes last night, 12 of 24, as Lucas brought up earlier in the show. This Iron Bowl of basketball. Did you see, I don't know if you saw this article from the Tuscaloosa News, that they went to the SEC men's basketball commissioner or associate commissioner, Garth Glissman, for comment on, was this on purpose? Did you try to have the Iron Bowl of college basketball on a Saturday? Are you trying to recreate some kind of level of, it just means more college basketball Saturday like you do for the Iron Bowl in the fall? And he said, absolutely. Quote, a conscious decision across the conference to make the weekends the most interesting in hopes that they'd keep game days reserved after football helmets have been hung up for the winter. So that matchup is going to be electric.
Oh, rocking.
I can't wait to see how it plays out. It is, arguably, given what the SEC has proven itself to be and what those two at the top of the conference have proven themselves to be, it's the biggest college basketball game of the regular season.
Yeah, it's 1 versus 2. We've not had that ever. In the history of the SEC, there's not been a conference game with the number 1 team in the country against the number 2 team in the country. And if I'm not mistaken, it has not happened since Tennessee-Memphis, all the way back in 2008. And the accounts of that game, just the star power, the celebrity power that was at that game at FedEx Forum between that Tennessee team led by Bruce Pearl and John Calipari led Memphis team. So, yeah, of course, Bruce Pearl is once again involved in that number 1 versus number 2 matchup coming up on Saturday. Cannot wait for that game. That's going to be the biggest Auburn-Alabama basketball game in the history of the series. Speaking of Alabama, quickly, I saw this from the Super Bowl. This is insane. Devontae Smith is the first player drafted out of Alabama to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy. Ever. Jalen Hurts.
Julio didn't have a touchdown in 28-3?
No. Jalen Hurts was not drafted out of Alabama, right? Obviously, Hurts.
But they were very quick to claim him over the weekend. Did you see all the Alabama We Love Jalen Hurts stuff after they ran him off to Oklahoma?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you can go back and Bart Starr and Joe Namath, right? But we're talking about having the ball in your hands when you cross the goal line.
Yeah.
Right? Like Bart Starr had passing touchdowns.
There's been so many awesome skill players out of Alabama.
The wide receiver position alone.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. But, you think about Julio is the one that you can definitively name. Oh, he's definitely played in the Super Bowl. But some of the best receivers to come out of Alabama, Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper, those guys haven't played in Super Bowls. And then otherwise, at least in the Nick Saban era, so many of those players, offensive and defensive linemen, right?
Yeah.
Defensive backs, linebackers. So obviously some pretty good running backs, but Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Eddie Lacy, TJ Yeldon, none of those guys ever got a chance to play in a Super Bowl. So Devontae Smith, first one in NFL history. Pretty crazy.
That is insane. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. A reminder before we go to the phones that you can join 1045 The Zone at the Music City Polar Plunge on Saturday, February the 22nd. The Music City Polar Plunge is where participants take a dip to support the Special Olympics of Tennessee, helping to provide year-round sports training, competitions, and inclusive programming for over 18,000 athletes with intellectual disabilities in Tennessee. For more info, visit 1045thezone.com/events. Let's go to Terry.
How's it going, guys?
Good.
Couple of things about what y'all were talking about Tennessee. They're the only ones to beat Alabama, right, this year in the SEC?
Is that right?
No.
They were 10-1.
No, Terry,
Tennessee beat them in Knoxville.
we have not played Alabama this year. Tennessee will play Alabama March 1st. I believe Bama's only loss is to Ole Miss. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
But I don't know if anybody's talked about this, but I've been telling my brother all year, Tennessee has no depth. They play like 7 players is all they play the whole game. That's not going to cut it in the tournament. They got to have depth. And I think this year this team is really good. The starting 5 is really good. But when you get in the tournament, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to be worn out by then. And I just don't see them going for it. Big as Tennessee fans I am, their depth is going to be the problem for them.
Thanks for the call, Terry. Right at the minute mark. Look at that. Kentucky just did it twice.
Yeah, for me, it's more about the inconsistencies, that the ups and downs. You shoot 53% from three-point land in the 2 games prior, and then you go 3 of 18 against Kentucky. That's what worries me about their March ceiling, more so than the depth of the rotation, although it's a valid concern.
Coming up next, we got a big announcement. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11:01. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. College hoops action on Tuesday. Number 5 Tennessee fell at number 15 Kentucky, 75-64. The Wildcats complete the regular season sweep of the Vols. Vanderbilt fell to top-ranked Auburn at Memorial Gym, 80-68. The final. More coaching staff movement in the NFL as the Saints made it official yesterday. Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore is the next head coach in New Orleans. Former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley reportedly is the favorite to be Moore's defensive coordinator. And former Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick has a new landing spot with the Miami Dolphins as senior passing game coordinator. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Now, I don't know how often our special announcements or our big announcements live up to the hype, but many of you have been taking guesses at what we are going to announce this morning as the second hour begins. Thanks for hanging out. Jackson, Lucas, and me with you until 1 o'clock. Now, we've gotten a third party to come in here and to potentially announce the news. It's Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Greg, are you here to tell me that the radio show is over, that it's going to be the Lucas Panzica show, and you're going to co-host from 10 to 1 weekday Central Time? Is that what's going on?
Say it, Greg.
Buck, you're done. I meant to tell you.
You're out of here.
It's like the old George Carlin routine, and everybody's a winner until they're not winners, and it's like, Bobby, come on in, you're fired. Get out of here.
But Greg, I still haven't 2 hours of the radio show left to do. Do I finish the show and then I'm fired, or what's the deal?
No, but I think you're okay, Buck, from what I understand. That's what I'm told.
Okay, well, excellent. The reason that Greg would have any level of insight to that, other than he's probably got more high-level sources than I do, is the fact that we are going to put on another live episode of The Install with our good buddy Greg Cosell of NFL Films at the Analog at the Hutton Hotel on Friday, May the 2nd. Give me some fanfare. Give me some crappy radio imaging. Yeah, no, that's reckless speculation.
You specifically asked for it.
All right, Greg, we're excited, aren't you?
Hey, you know how much I love coming down to see you guys, and how awesome was it last year? Hopefully it's even more awesome this year. I'm pretty excited about it. May 2nd feels like a long way off, but you know how that works, Buck. It happens real fast.
And this is going to be a fascinating draft. I mean, Greg, I know we're going to talk about some larger themes from the 2024 season today. We're going to do a live episode of The Install today on the radio show, and then a live episode of The Install on May the 2nd. Tickets are available at 1045thezone.com. It sold out with a month to go last year, and obviously we had Rand Carthon participating in the show. We'll wait a little longer before we announce special guests and things of that nature, but the tickets are on sale right now, starting at $30. If you want the best opportunity for the best value, now is the time, 1045thezone.com. for more information. It's a fascinating offseason, Greg. They need everything, but they also need quarterback, which is going to be compelling to see how this whole thing plays out.
Very compelling. I think this quarterback class is going to be polarizing. I think you're going to see a lot of people with different points of view. They're all valid based on tape study. I've actually, believe it or not, Buck, I've actually finished up 3 guys in detail. I'm done with Cam Ward, with Jackson Dart, and with Shadir Sanders. So I'm done with my evaluations of those 3 players, and nothing's going to change me because it's all based on tape study. So that's I've done those guys. I'm actually watching a fascinating guy, believe it or not, this morning, because yesterday, of course, I spent all day watching the Super Bowl, but today I'm actually watching Tyler Shuck from Louisville, a very, very fascinating player.
Got a lot of love coming out of the Senior Bowl, and obviously has had a good deal of collegiate experience across multiple transfer opportunities. Greg Cosell of NFL Films here with us. The announcement of the day is that The Install Live is making its return, the third annual tradition at the Analog Hotel on May the 2nd.
So, Greg, with your evaluation of Ward and Sanders, I know you guys will be talking a lot about it on the Install podcast for the course of the next few weeks, but can you kind of just give us a preview, some insight into maybe where you have landed on Ward and Sanders specifically relative to what you thought about them at a very surface level before you took a deep dive into the tape?
Well, Lucas, the funny thing is Sanders I've actually watched for 3 consecutive years. I watched his season at Jackson State. I've watched his last 2 in detail at Colorado. Ward I did last summer at Washington State, and then I did him obviously this year at the U. We don't want to give too much away now, Lucas, but in my view, based on, and this is purely on film study, I hope people understand, I don't know the players personally. So, and that factors in a significant way, certainly at the quarterback position. But just based on film, I find Ward to be a meaningfully better prospect. Now, I don't mean he's a 10 and Sanders is a 3, but I think Ward, based on tape study, just to me, fits the NFL game a little better, and to me he was number 1.
Well, and it's if there was a consensus top quarterback, Greg, we were talking about this yesterday on the show, we would know by now. Like there would be no hiding it from anybody. Just the same with Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence or any of the Caleb Williams. We knew for months at that point. We knew at the end of Caleb Williams' collegiate season he was going to be the top pick.
Yeah, and even someone like Jackson Dart, who I've also finished, I think he's very much in the eye of the beholder. I mean, remember last year, Bo Nix was the 12th pick in the draft, obviously had a tremendous season under Sean Payton. And as you know, Buck, because we've been doing this for years, I finished Bo Nix last February, well before the draft. And in my transition notes, I said he'd be a perfect fit for a Sean Payton offense. And that's exactly what happened. So sometimes players are, have fit a system. They're in the eye of the coach, because the difference between scouts and coaches very often, not 100%, is coaches tend to think in terms of scheme adaptability. Obviously, they look at traits and attributes, no question. I mean, it's like a receiver. If you run a 5.2, you're not going to be a receiver in the NFL. But, all things being equal, coaches tend to think, how does a player fit into my scheme? And, so I thought when I watched Bo Nix, man, did he fit into Sean Payton's scheme? And I think Jackson Dart is going to be one of those guys that a coach could easily fall in love with his game and think that, hey, he fits what I do.
We'll have many months to talk about the draft prospects with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. You can subscribe to the Install podcast. Obviously, we do the podcast each and every week. Today it's live because we've got the announcement for the live show. Tickets are available at 1045thezone.com. You can pick them up starting at $30 today. There is also, as always, a VIP option, which Greg and I always enjoy doing the happy hour with the VIP attendees before the show begins.
But that was a lot of fun last year. We had a really good group for the VIP, and that was a lot of fun.
Listen, Greg, we've got back-to-back sellouts. I mean, these things are a great time, and it's an awesome thing to be able to interact with the fans and for fans to be able to ask you. And last year, Rand Carthon questions. It was really cool of him to come down.
That was terrific. But that VIP part, and I hope people understand that, that is such a fun time, because it's an hour of just, kind of talking without it being official, where we actually sit down and do it, which is great also. But, I got to interact with so many fans last year in that hour before, and that was really a fun time.
And also a full bar. What's better than that? Greg Cosell here with us.
And food. You can't leave out the food, Buck.
That's right. I know Greg was hovering over the hors d'oeuvres for a good portion of the VIP hour. Absolutely. So to that point, though, Greg, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about positions in the draft class. We'll obviously do a live one of these at the Combine, because you and I are both going to be there. But specific to the 2024 season, you just talked about your quarterback evaluations or your profiles that you did heading into last year's draft. Relative to your expectation, or what your expectation was based on the film that you saw from these guys, and we can keep it to the quarterbacks, were there any of them that exceeded your expectations, or was everybody basically kind of did it play out how you thought it might?
Of the guys I've seen, it played out as, I would say I probably liked Dart a little more than I thought I would when I was finished with his 2024 tape, because I did him last summer as well from 2023. And, I kept watching Dart, because I end up watching with quarterbacks in particular, Buck, and you know this, we've talked about this. With quarterbacks, I end up watching 7, 8, 9 games. I just get caught up in it because it's just, they're quarterbacks, and I just can't help myself, So Dart ended up being a quarterback that I liked a little more than I anticipated based on what I saw from his 2023 tape. I would say Ward and Sanders were relatively the same. I mean, you always see certain things, and I'm not going to sit here and read my notes now. We'll have plenty of time for that. But I would say Ward and Sanders were pretty much what I expected based on what I saw on their 2023 tape.
Greg, looking back at the 2024 quarterback class, we were coming off of a year where multiple guys were thrown into situations that they clearly were not ready for, right? With Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson and Will Levis as well, just drowning a little bit, C.J. Stroud being the exception. And then you turn around in the 2024 quarterback class, exceeded expectations for the most part, Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix in particular. What kind of situations do you think those players were in that allowed them to thrive as opposed to a player like an Anthony Richardson that had all the tools, or a Bryce Young that the developmental path clearly was much, much longer? Like, what made Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels' situation conducive to success in 2024?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Lucas, because, you talk about all the tools. I would say, and again, this is all based on tape. As I said, I don't spend a ton of time with these guys. I don't know them personally. But I would say that's not the case necessarily with Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson. Bryce Young's in a tough spot because he was a number one pick in the draft, so therefore people expect him to be great. But he's a certain kind of player, and therefore he needs certain things around him in order to be successful. Bryce Young is a shorter quarterback, does not have a big arm, needs to be protected, needs the interior of an offensive line to be really, really good because that controls the depth of the pocket. He needs space. At his best, he's really an efficient ball distributor, and he's an executor of an offense, and he needs a complete offense to be effective. And they started to do a better job of that as this season progressed because Hubbard had a very good year for Carolina as a running back. Richardson is a fascinating guy because obviously the size, the power arm, which is ridiculous, but his ball location is just really all over the place. And, sometimes you watch a quarterback and his ball location is just not as precise as you want, but it's okay. Richardson is totally scattershot, Lucas. He's all over the place. And maybe every once in a while he makes a great throw and you go, man, that is just big time special. But he's all over the place. And it's hard to succeed in this league no matter how big you are, how physical you are, how far you can throw it. If you really can't place it, where do you want to?
Because the discussion here, Greg, is about if the Titans take a quarterback with the number one overall pick, they could certainly trade out. They could certainly take an Abdul Carter or whoever. But if they were to take a quarterback, there would probably be a baseline expectation for the number one overall pick at the quarterback position to play immediately. So just kind of trying to draw the comparisons of what set up some of those rookies for success last year and what the Titans do and don't have in that regard. What are two or three of the baseline factors that you think have to be in place for a rookie quarterback, unless they're a Joe Burrow, right, or an anomaly, to have success in their rookie year?
Well, in some ways, Lucas, it comes down to the individual because take someone like Drake May. Okay, Drake May actually played pretty well this season on a team that had a below-average NFL offensive line, very little at the wide receiver position, a very inconsistent run game, yet he performed well. And he was probably in the toughest spot of any of the quarterbacks. I mean, he was a number 3 pick in the draft, and he performed well. So that probably speaks to who he is as an individual. It's funny. Caleb Williams obviously got sacked a ton, and teams do these kinds of studies, Lucas, where which I can't do. I'm one person, so I can't do a study where a team could have 5 people, doing these kinds of things. But the study says over time that quarterbacks that get sacked a lot in college get sacked a lot in the NFL. And Caleb Williams was sacked over 80 times in 2 years at USC. And it's very easy to say that, the offensive line wasn't great. Just like that's what you're going to hear about Jadir Sanders. The offensive line wasn't great. And he got sacked a ton. But I got to tell you, when I was listening, doing games, obviously I was at the Super Bowl, so I didn't hear Tom Brady on Sunday. But I've heard Tom Brady a number of games this year, and he knows a little more about the quarterback position than I do. Just a little, but he knows more, And he kept saying a number of times that sacks are on the quarterback. And I believe him to be correct. Unless it's a true jailbreak, which rarely happens, sacks are on the quarterback. And you just wonder, these guys that get sacked a ton in college, is that going to continue in the league? We'll see with Caleb Williams this year with Ben Johnson, who's obviously terrific as an offensive coordinator in his route concepts and combinations. But Caleb Williams has to learn how to play with a much more refined sense of timing and rhythm.
And Colorado, bottom 10 in college football in sacks allowed with 43 last season.
And it's funny you say that because Shadir Sanders, one of the things he has to clean up is he has a tendency to retreat backwards. And you can't retreat backwards in the NFL. The only guy that can do that on occasion and get away with it is Lamar Jackson, but he's a freak. And Shedeur Sanders is not that guy. So, you know, they're all these guys, by the way, even the guys from last year, Lucas, when it was a really good class, they all have things to clean up. No one comes into the league as a finished product. So they all have things to clean up, and they have to accept the coaching part of it.
The BYU game, a great example of that Shedeur trait specifically, Greg, running out of the back or retreating when he is trying to avoid pressure and taking sacks that go for, I mean, I think there were losses of 16 yards or almost 20 yards on a couple of the sacks that he took in that bowl game. Greg Cosell of NFL Films, the only person who I heard mention Milton Williams as an impact player as a part of his pre-Super Bowl analysis. Here with us on 104.5 The Zone, the live show announced for May the 2nd at the Analog Hotel. Tickets are available with me and Greg and everybody else. We had a sellout crowd the last two seasons. We're going to be breaking down the Friday after the NFL draft, whatever it is that the Titans did, and we're looking forward to that with you. 1045thezone.com is where you can go. Greg, we talked about it on a week-by-week basis, and I know that overarching themes are a little tougher to kind of assign value to, but on the whole, how would you summarize the Titans' offensive experience in 2024?
Not very good, obviously. Although there were some definite highlights. I mean, under the circumstances of a very, erratic and inconsistent quarterback situation, I would say Tony Pollard really played at a high level. I mean, it's hard to do when the pass game is a week-to-week proposition and you just don't know what you're going to get. And I thought he ran tough. I thought he ran hard. I mean, he's not a 230-pound back. He'd probably be considered almost more of a scat back type. But I thought he ran really hard, really well. I think the O-line continues to be a work in progress. I would expect Latham to continue to get better. I think the question for Mike Bergonzi and staff, and I really like what they've done with the whole staff, bringing in McKenzie, who's been around the league a long, long time. They have really good people in the building, is whether Latham stays at left tackle or moves to right tackle. And obviously, if you move him, you need a left tackle. But let's assume he stays there. The right side of the O-line needs really to be addressed. And I will say this, Buck, and I don't remember if you and I have discussed this, but I learned this a long time ago from a really smart GM, that I don't know how they're going to evaluate the quarterbacks, but if you evaluate, if the number one quarterback on your board is the 25th best player on your board, you can't take him at number one. You have to take the guy who's number one on your board. It's just, to me, I learned that, and I think that over time, do you get lucky once in a while? Yes. But, I think that most teams would tell you you've got to stay true to your board, and it's so exciting, especially if you feel, and I don't know what this new group thinks of Will Levis, but let's assume for the moment that they don't think he's the guy. Let's just assume that. Then you're thinking, well, we need a quarterback, and it's so easy to draft one, even if he's the 25th best player on the board. And I think you have to be careful about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to tell us a lot about where they think their timeline is. And, of course, we have no idea where these players are graded on their board, nor will they tell us that information.
No,
Greg.
Of course. But let's assume for the moment, just for the sake of discussion now, that they're two highest rated players. Just sake of discussion. You and I don't know, Buck. Let's say it's Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, for sake of discussion. Those are positions the Titans need. So, if that's the way it works, then you got to take one of those guys, unless you're trading out.
Greg Cosell, NFL Films, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Greg, we talked a lot about this Super Bowl before, in the lead-up, obviously, before we talk about the season at large. The way that it played itself out, I think the thing tactically that most surprised me, and maybe you weren't, maybe surprised is not the word that you would use there, but the fact that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, I expected them to take a couple of series, try and identify what the Eagles' keys or rules on defense were, and then, work their way into exploiting them the way that we've seen them do time in and time out. And it never happened against that Eagles defense, Greg.
Yeah, and as I was watching the tape, Buck, I was trying to think to myself, because you know me, I'm a process guy, so I was trying to think, when they were starting their game planning, what made them take that approach? Because here was the approach. 4-man D-line pass rush. Okay, 39 of 42 Mahomes dropbacks were a 4-man pass rush. I think 2 of them were sim pressures where Bond might have been the 4th guy, but essentially it was a 4-man D-line pass rush. Every single play started with a 2-high safety structure, and more than 75% of the defensive snaps they played out of a 2-high safety structure. So as I'm watching the tape, I'm trying to think, how did they come up with this? And what I basically decided, and I since found out it's the reason, but they just believed, and they turned out to be correct, that their front 4 was better, more athletic than the O-line for the Chiefs. And with all the stunting they did beginning in the second quarter, they just dominated physically and athletically that offensive line, which quite frankly has 3 players who are not truly starting players. Joe Thuney is not a tackle. He's a really good guard, but he's not a tackle. Caliendo at left guard should not be a starter. And Jawan Taylor has really not been a very good right tackle for quite a number of years. So there were 3 guys on that O-line that were just not up to the task against that Eagles D-line. And the Eagles clearly felt that, and the way it played out, you could say they knew that going in. And with all the stunting they did, the athleticism just took over.
Well, Greg, I am excited to have you in town as always. We can't wait to put the live show on, and I know the audience is excited to be a part of it again. Looking forward to it, my friend.
Oh man, Buck! I like I said, I can't wait. I'll be grinding until the draft. There's no time off for me right now. I wish there was, but people always say to me, "Well, aren't you done now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be done on about April, whatever date that is." But now it's just grinding, watching college players.
I feel like I'm imagining you just in a dark room, Greg, while the entire city of Philadelphia burns around you during the celebration.
Well, I'm not in a dark room, Lucas, because then I fall asleep. So I can't do that. But I imagine it's, I guess the parade is here on Friday. We had some snow last night, but I think by Friday it's supposed to be okay. So I imagine there'll be some fireworks on Friday in the city of brotherly love.
There's no question about it. Celebrating that Super Bowl 59 dominating victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. Greg, take care. We'll do it again next week, buddy.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Looking forward to May 2nd.
Absolutely. May 2nd is the date for the Install Live with Greg Cosell. Greg's flying in from the Philadelphia area. We will host you all at the Analog Hotel the Friday after the draft. We will break down the entire draft class. The past 2 years, we've done it with tape cut-ups that A to Z Sports Film Room has been kind enough to acquire for us. So we've got Greg breaking down the tape for you guys in a special live edition of the podcast, full bar. Food is included with the VIP ticket purchase, but tickets are on sale and available as low as $30 today for, honestly, the event, Lucas, that a lot of other people, because Greg doesn't just do hits here. He does hits, he's got Colin Cowherd, I think, here in about 30 minutes. So Greg's doing football analysis all over the country. Last year, it was interesting to me to see some of the places like Buffalo, where Greg does other work, quote tweeting pictures and videos of our event, being like, wouldn't that be cool to do here? Nobody else in the country is doing what we're doing here, for what Greg is doing here for Titans fans. I won't include myself in that, even though I'm along for the ride.
It was a great time. Great time last year.
That's not a fine. Why is that a fine? I could have come in here after going to New Orleans last week and got the holy hell fine out of myself. I would have loved it too. Would have loved it.
Do it.
No. Maybe later. Maybe at the end of the show. 615-737-1045 is the number. Coming up next. Do I have things to give away?
You do. 2 tickets to see the Doobie Brothers concert.
Ooh.
At First Bank Amphitheater on September 15th, the Walk This Road tour.
615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to go see the Doobie Brothers in September, all you need to do is call us and tell us what the dumbest thing in sports this week is. Will I have enough money when I retire? When should I start to draw from Social Security? If these are the questions that are keeping you up at night, let me introduce you to the team that's there to keep you on the right track and guide you through it. That's Trajan Wealth, Trajan Wealth. Trajan Wealth is not just any financial firm. They are your partners in securing your financial future. And they're more than just a fiduciary firm. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience specializing in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and your peace of mind. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000, or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement. 615-737-1045. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? If you call in and give us your submission, and it's the best submission or the dumbest submission, we'll send you to see the Doobie Brothers. Jackson, where is the concert and what is the date?
It is the Doobie Brothers Walk This Road Tour with special guest, the Coral Reefer Band, on September the 15th at First Bank Amphitheater.
615-737-1045. Call in. Tell us what the dumbest thing in sports this week is, and we'll give you those 2 concert tickets. I'll start. I hate my basketball coach, even though they won last night. They upset Michigan State at Michigan State. And I know that we talk entirely too much Indiana basketball for a Nashville-based Middle Tennessee sports show. But
we just don't understand how you can hate an icon of the game of basketball the way that you do.
No, an Indiana legend. Not just an icon of the game of basketball, but a man who brought you a championship as a player.
Build the statue.
Reasons like this are how I can hate, said program legend. It has been reported and confirmed by the university that Mike Woodson will step down at the end of the year as the Indiana men's basketball coach. They played a game at Michigan where they almost upset Michigan, but he was ultimately beat. Mike Woodson was fourth win in a row for Michigan, by the way, for the person that Indiana should have hired, Dusty May. And Mike Woodson gave, as is the custom, a press conference afterwards. Media in attendance at the press conference were told that questions about Mike Woodson's job status were off limits. Mike Woodson coached the New York Knicks.
Yeah, it's big news. It's big news to me.
What do you mean you can't ask him a question about it? So I don't know who that is. I don't know if that's the sports information director. I don't know if that's Mike Woodson. I don't know if that's the Indiana athletic director. All I know is that's chicken bleep.
Yeah.
That's garbage. That's the dumbest thing in sports this week. It's one of the biggest headlines in sports, not Super Bowl related. What do you mean you can't ask him a question about it? Garbage.
Yeah. No, that is...
I hate them.
That feels pretty small time, doesn't it?
They are. They are such a small time waste of time.
Yeah.
God.
Anyway. It's only the biggest news surrounding the program at the moment, because certainly there's not news coming out of their on-court performances.
But yeah, let's ask Mike Woodson about that bad beat buzzer beater at the end of the Michigan game.
Did they
trying to let a legend go out his way.
Idiots.
You know?
Did they let the media ask about him trying to escape the handshake line and having a player having to direct him back to the handshake line?
I do not have that information at my disposal right now.
Like a dad scolding a child at like a youth soccer game. No, you go shake those hands, son.
I just assumed he's a senile old man and he forgot where he was and he started to shuffle off the court and somebody had to go grab him and be like, no, Mike, come on, we'll give you your applesauce after the fact. Idiots.
Well, Carl Ravitch definitely is not a senile old man. He is a fantastic broadcaster, but this was
rip him.
A tough look yesterday during the Alabama-Texas game on ESPN. Bama routing Texas. It's 99-77 at this point with just over a minute to play. And Carl Ravitch got in the same way that Archie Miller did a few weeks ago. This was Ravitch talking about the state of the SEC late on last night's broadcast.
So think about it. We know how dominant they were in the non-conference season, the SEC. They were 185-23. Since January 4 into Tuesday, the SEC teams are 82-82. It's not as if one team or two teams or three. They're 82-82. Like, there's been no ability to pull away. There's no dominant group of teams.
No, Carl.
Nothing he said is incorrect.
No, it's accurate.
It was completely factual, but they are 82-82 because they have played each other since January 4th. That's when SEC play began. There has to be a winner and there has to be a loser of every game. So every conference in America, in fact, is exactly 500 since the start of that respective conference's play.
Who had to tell him? Did a producer get in his ear? Did somebody, his broadcast partner after they went to commercial break be like, Carl?
Odds are a producer told him that stat.
I bet he probably just figured it out on his own. A lot of times when you say something dumb on the air, which I have done so many times.
Every day.
It just kind of... it'll dawn on you a little bit after the fact, usually when it's way too late to go back and correct it. So, I am on no high horse to be able to hand down criticisms to Carl Ravitch, who is one of the faces of ESPN play-by-play, mostly for baseball, but he does a lot of hoops too. But yeah, that was tough. He got, as did Archie Miller, the head coach. He's at Xavier. correct?
Archie? Yes.
Yeah.
No, wait. Archie is not at Xavier. He's somewhere less than Xavier.
Less than Xavier?
Yes.
That's right. He's at Rhode Island.
Yeah.
But it was Archie Miller recently, right? That he
right.
said the same thing. So
program legend.
Yes.
Indiana basketball program legend.
Yes.
Surrounded by idiots.
The SEC is indeed 500 against itself since the start of SEC play.
Jackson.
I'm going with this Pat Mahomes Sr. and John Rocker beef on Bourbon Street.
Why is his entire family an embarrassment? And he's just so good at everything.
He is the definitely the favorite child, and what are you doing? What are we doing? Why can't we just stay in the hotel this week? Why do we have to be out there causing a fight? It's just ridiculous at this point.
I wonder if that is a beef that goes back because they.
does.
Oh yeah.
Okay, because they played in the same era.
John Rocker famously pointing out on Twitter, I would have whooped your scrawny ass then, and I would have whooped your scrawny ass now.
Okay, so this was the seeds were planted years ago.
Yes, this has been fomenting.
The video is crazy. They are about to just go to blows.
John Rocker is a huge human being.
Who wins?
Rocker.
Rocker, yeah. I mean,
one would assume.
Yeah, he looks like a WWE wrestler right now. But who knows what it was? Who knows what it's about?
It really is Mahomes' entire family that is just thoroughly unlikable, other than Pat. Anyway, 615-737-1045 for the opportunity to win some Doobie Brothers tickets to the upcoming concert at First Bank Amphitheater in September. Give us the dumbest thing in sports this week. Let's go with Jimmy first.
I think the dumbest thing in sports is the AP poll not ranking Alabama number one after Auburn gets a blowout loss and Duke gets a blowout loss and Alabama has a blowout win. How can you not put Alabama at number one?
Yeah, I agree, Jimmy. I think Bama should have been the number one team. I was pretty surprised Auburn stayed up there. I wouldn't call it a blowout loss. 90-81, the final. They lost at home to Florida. Finally dropped an SEC game. Auburn is probably the best team in the country, but that's tough for me. For Bama to sweep their week of games, Auburn to drop a loss, and still sit there at number one. I think I agree with Jimmy on that one.
Dylan is next. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week?
Dumbest thing for me was when I was scrolling through the channels on Saturday and I saw that there is actually the pillow fight championship. And this was on ESPN News. I guess it's technically the Ocho. But I can think of a million things I would rather watch. Not to mention, not to be sexist or anything, but it was two dudes. It was not what you would picture. Absolutely awful.
I'm sorry that the pillow fight match disappointed you.
Lost a lot of money on that pillow fighting championship.
I want to know. That was exactly my question. Who bet it? Which one of you degenerates bet it?
Oh, I must disagree with you, Dylan. I did not know this existed. But
I'm delighted by it.
Give me more pillow fighting championships. Yesterday, I'm seeing videos of it. This is amazing.
Can we enter Bert?
This is awesome.
I would like to enter Bert, especially knowing that it's is there a male division and a female division?
Let's do a zone pillow fight championship.
Ooh, who would win that?
Me, because I'm coming with rocks in the pillowcase.
Wow.
There's no way that you're the only person that puts rocks in the pillowcase. I would have said bars of soap, like the is the Full Metal Jacket movie?
Yes, Full Metal Jacket. I would rather watch pillow fighting championships than the current iteration of the Pro Bowl. There are many things I would watch pillow fighting over.
So we have a winner, Jimmy?
Yes.
Congratulations to Jimmy. He's going to the Doobie Brothers concert at First Bank Amphitheater in September. Always call us, usually Wednesday at 11, but since we had the announcement with Cosell, we did it today at 11:30. The dumbest thing in sports this week. All right. Coming up next, let us get into the latest reporting on a potential soon-to-be free agent quarterback situation that's about to get his walking papers from his current team. Should the Titans be interested? We'll talk about it. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, the best hot chicken in the world. It's almost lunchtime. I guess it could be lunchtime for some people.
It's lunchtime.
Not everybody. Do you differentiate between your meals, or is it just one constant thread between the time that you wake up and start consuming things and the time that you go to bed? Like, I don't think that you differentiate between a snack and a meal and just what you're shoveling into your face at any given point.
Fair. But I do, in my mind, anything after 11 a.m. is fair game for lunchtime. Like, I have no problem eating, like, you're right. It's all flat circle.
Differentiating.
Lucas, what are your thoughts on breakfast for dinner?
I've never been a big breakfast for dinner guy. I don't have anything against it, but I don't think I've ever made breakfast for dinner. It's
wonderful.
I'll make eggs as a part of my dinner. Like, does steak and eggs count as breakfast for dinner?
Yes.
Okay.
Eggs make it a breakfast meal.
But I've never had, like, pancakes for dinner.
You're missing out.
I did it in college a lot.
Missing out. I thought about it last night.
I mean, I love me some flapjacks. Just never had it for dinner. For dinner, I want pasta. I want chicken. I
wouldn't
want
be able to tell from your Instagram story. It's literally just various pasta dishes that he keeps in a rotation.
Yep. You got one in mind for tonight?
On any given night.
Follow him at Lucas Panzica on Instagram.
Thank you.
All the food tips.
Nothing else, just food.
Yep.
Speaking of a rotating or a cycle of life, Aaron Rodgers, the cycle of his quarterback life at this point in time, it's coming to an end with the New York Jets. There's been some additional reporting yesterday from Diana Rossini of The Athletic, who will join us at some point next week. The Aaron Rodgers era is over for the New York Jets, she writes yesterday in The Athletic, though the team did present Rodgers with a potential plan to move forward with him as their quarterback in 2025. It included stipulations about outside media work during the season, i.e. Pat McAfee, I add parenthetically, and a requirement that he attend all mandatory off-season workouts according to team and league sources. Rodgers apparently flew to New Jersey last week to meet with the new team leadership, including head coach Aaron Glenn and new GM Darryl, I don't know how to pronounce, or Darren, Mougey. How do you think that's pronounced?
Moog. I don't know.
Either way, the new GM of the Jets. Heading into the meeting, Diana reports the Jets were undecided on whether to go forward with Rodgers, but were open to the possibility if Rodgers agreed to make adjustments. Among them, Rodgers would no longer be permitted to make outside media appearances during the season, including his regular paid appearances on the Pat McAfee Show. He would be required to attend all mandatory practices. Last year, famously, he missed 2 mandatory minicamp practices due to a previously scheduled vacation trip to Egypt, my homeland. Those are the 2 primary bullet points that Diana puts. Now the Jets are expected to release him at 41 years old. Now, here's the thing that we don't know. Did Aaron Rodgers decide that he still wanted to miss things like mandatory minicamp and do the Pat McAfee Show, and that was more important to him than staying as the quarterback of the Jets? And were these ultimatums? Diana's making it sound like the Jets did not have, a decision in mind when they met with Aaron Rodgers. They had some rules that they wanted him to follow, and ultimately, whatever the discussion looked like inside the room, Aaron Rodgers is no longer expected to be with the Jets. Again, I reiterate this. I think there is I'm not going to say that there's no chance that Aaron Rodgers isn't the Titans quarterback in 2025, but I think the percentage chance is, minuscule, infinitesimal. I don't think, for no other reason than I would be shocked to find out that Brian Callahan wanted to tie himself to Aaron Rodgers in 2025.
What is the market going to look like for Aaron Rodgers?
I'd be curious to know. So, but if it's in consideration, because he will be a free agent quarterback available on the market, and he could be the best possible option depending on how the dominoes fall.
He could be the best possible option regardless. Like, there is a scenario where some would consider him a better option than Sam Darnold. Some would. And if Darnold's not on the market,
I would probably trust him more than Sam Darnold.
I think I would.
With this team, with what this team currently looks like, I would trust Aaron Rodgers more than I would trust Sam Darnold.
And if Darnold is not on the market, he is the best option right now relative to everyone that is currently available.
Sure. So here's what the Jets, at least the Jets side of this thing, tells me. They're trying to take back control. Aaron Rodgers was put in a position of power in that organization. I have said for several seasons, at the end of the Green Bay tenure and heading into his Jets tenure that there was not a more powerful NFL player relative to his circumstance than Aaron Rodgers. Nobody had more control over the situation in the last couple of years than Aaron Rodgers did. The question is, if the Titans are even going to remotely consider it, and again, I would be shocked if they did, are you willing to let him have some degree of control over this thing? Are fans okay with it? I guess it doesn't matter because the team's going to make a decision and fans can either like it or live with it. But it sounds like he still wants to maintain some of these things that they're talking about, whether it's exclusive, like whether he, the breaking point was he wants to do Pat McAfee and the Jets didn't want him to anymore. I have no idea.
Or whether it's no Alan Lazard must come with me.
If it's Devontae Adams, I'm good with it. If it's Alan Lazard, I'm a little less good.
He's a fine player.
There's so many things to take into consideration with him specifically. He is an outlier among every other quarterback discussion that we're going to have this offseason. He owns property here. It's an easy assumption to jump to say that Aaron Rodgers would be in consideration for this job. I truly and honestly believe that he is not.
The question is, what does he want? Because the move to New York was a Super Bowl swing.
Yeah,
right?
They thought they had a Super Bowl team.
That was an all-in situation. Are there any other situations even remotely close? So does Aaron Rodgers want to continue his career just for the sake of continuing his career,
Minnesota.
for the sake of another contract?
Of the options that are available, it's Pittsburgh or Minnesota.
Minnesota is sitting there with Sam Darnold, who just led them to a 14-win season, and a first-round rookie that they could turn to. I have a hard time seeing that happening. Minnesota ditching both of those options and you could keep J.J. McCarthy on the roster, obviously, for Aaron Rodgers. Like, what about Cleveland, right? What about a team that's got somewhat of a roster in place? Is Andrew Berry thinking something like that right now? Okay, Miles, what if we get Aaron Rodgers in here, right? What if we just... He comes in and we're immediately in a position to maybe push for something. Please don't leave.
I don't know. Did the Browns play the Jets last year? If Myles Garrett got an up close and personal look of Aaron Rodgers, he may have some different thoughts than, just trafficking in the name of Aaron Rodgers. Because that's what that kind of feels like to me. And I don't know if it doesn't. It clearly does not carry the same weight that it used to. Garrett Wilson was unhappy with Aaron Rodgers, to the point where Garrett Wilson, Ian Rappaport was reporting not that long ago that Garrett Wilson was trying to find a way out of New York.
Yeah.
Now, some of that is because the losing in New York just wears on you. Of all the miserable fan bases, all the miserable franchises out there, I think the Jets are the worst by a mile. And that is something that has to be in consideration, because what has lacked here in Tennessee basically since the principal parties moved on. It's not just about Vrabel, right? It's about Derrick Henry. You could go back to Delaney Walker, Jarrell Casey, guys who mattered here, were institutional parts of the Titans locker room. Even Logan Ryan, Malcolm Butler, those kind of dudes. They have lacked an identity. They have had it's not like they are lacking or they have a bad culture or it's like rotten from the inside out. I don't feel that, but I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of nebulous at this point. If you introduce an element like Aaron Rodgers into your locker room, you better have a strong setup around you. And I just don't know that they're there yet.
Right, and that Pittsburgh screams that type of situation.
It's because you trust the coach.
Rodgers also strikes me as a legacy guy that wants to kind of get back some of the equity and how he's talked about and thought of from what happened in New York.
You may not want to do it, but I would watch the first episode of that Netflix Aaron Rodgers documentary and then try to tell me if you have any earthly idea what that dude is after in his life. Because I don't.
He's an enigma, some would say. Wasn't that the name of the documentary?
Don't explain the joke.
I know.
Just tell the joke.
That's why it was funny, because it's the name of the documentary. Not everybody knows that.
The number one pick and trading it. What precedence does it have? We'll talk about it next.
12:01. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. College hoops action on Tuesday. Number 5 Tennessee fell at number 15 Kentucky. 75-64 the final score. The Wildcats complete the regular season sweep of the Vols. Tennessee only hitting 3 3-point attempts as Kentucky went 50% from 3-point land. Vanderbilt fell to top-ranked Auburn at Memorial Gym, 80-68 the final score. There is breaking coaching news in the world of college football. Pete Thamel of ESPN reporting that Ohio State is set to hire former Lions head coach and Patriots defensive coordinator Matt Patricia for its defensive coordinator job, replacing the outgoing Jim Knowles, who took the defensive coordinator job at Penn State. In the NFL, Kellen Moore is now official as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, formerly the Eagles offensive coordinator. He reportedly will bring in former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley as his defensive coordinator. College hoops tonight, the Belmont Bruins are on the road at Valpo, a 7 p.m. tip-off. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
So to Lucas's point, we do have breaking coaching news. Matt Patricia. The laser light show feels excessive here, but it's fine. Matt Patricia is going to be the defensive coordinator of the Ohio State Buckeyes. He took a gap year.
There's the oopsie. There were wagers being placed on when Jackson's first oopsie was going to happen today. 12:03 wins out. PM Central Time.
That's pretty good.
Get away from that microphone before I come back there and strangle you.
You won't do it.
Try me. I'm in a particularly menacing mood today.
Do it.
Matt Patricia has not been in coaching since 2023, since the debacle. Well, he was with the Eagles in 2023 because there was that weird senior defensive assistant thing, and then Sean Desai got demoted as the defensive play caller, and Matt Patricia took over, and that was after he was the senior football advisor, except kind of an offensive coordinator in New England. That was weird. What you had going on, he had 14 seasons where Matt Patricia built up his resume with Bill Belichick in New England. Then he was the head coach of the Lions from 2018 to 2020. 13-29-1 in 2.5 seasons in Detroit. Now he takes over, as Lucas mentioned, for Jim Knowles, who departed Ohio State for Penn State because Penn State just paid him more money. And now he gets to market himself as a national championship coordinator and make a lateral move for a lot more cash.
$3 million a year for Knowles.
They also, Ohio State did, promoted Brian Hartline and Keenan Bailey to co-offensive coordinators.
So Brian Hartline has been the co-offensive coordinator in the past with no play-calling duties, and Bruce Feldman came on when you were out last week and confirmed Brian Hartline will call plays for Ohio State. That was a very key pivot that Ryan Day made, giving up play-calling duties, bringing in Chip Kelly, an established name, obviously, and a mentor of his. But as Chip Kelly leaves, I was very curious at what Ryan Day was going to do next because we talked about it. We did a whole segment on it. I'm curious, can you name the last college football head coach to win a national championship as a play-calling head coach?
It's not Urban, is it?
Nope. Urban did not call plays as a head coach. Dan Mullen was his OC for those Florida national championships. Ryan Day was his OC for the Ohio State one.
Tell me.
Jimbo, 2013.
Really?
In fact, Florida did not have an offensive coordinator on the coaching staff that year. Even if you're a play-calling head coach, you'll have an offensive coordinator, just doesn't call play. Brian Callahan has one. Josh Heupel has one. But Jimbo said, no, I'm the offensive coordinator. Literally, his name is next to the offensive coordinator position.
That's right.
Anyway, so Ryan Day stayed true to that pivot and promotes Brian Hartline and is giving him the opportunity to call plays for Ohio State this year and brings in a veteran defensive coordinator in Matt Patricia who has never coached at the college level since his time as a GA at Syracuse in 2003.
All right, so let me ask you this as the representative of the college football consuming population around here. Does it matter anymore, and maybe it never really carried that much weight, but does it matter if a coach comes in without college experience, and does that change your opinion at all? Does it change your opinion at all that it's at a place like Ohio State? Because Ohio State is coming off a national championship. They will defend their national title this year. There's going to be a lot of eyes on Ohio State. There's going to be a lot of eyes on these specific hires that they've made to replace Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles. Does it matter at all that this person really has no college football experience?
The most notable career NFL assistant hired in a major coordinator role in college that I can remember in recent years would be Brian Daboll to Alabama. That worked pretty well for Alabama. So I'm intrigued by this. I'm very intrigued by this. I mean, Ryan Day had the opportunity to make a big swing, and I guess this is a big swing. I mean, I don't know, other than swooping up a coup for any other big-name defensive coordinator that we can pay you more than where you currently are. This is as big a name as he could bring in. How it'll go, that I'm not sure. But, man, who had both Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia in the college game in 2025?
The Belichick thing is going to continue to be interesting. Do you see ESPN's already picking up North Carolina games as a part of their broadcast schedule and adjusting some things as a result of Bill Belichick's, being on the college football sidelines for the first time? It is going to be something, a spectacle. Speaking of spectacles.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing here.
I just looked over at, is this ongoing? Or is this B-roll that's being shown? Okay, so
B-roll.
SportsCenter right now is, we rarely ever have SportsCenter on in the studio. Normally I make Jackson show us either current or older episodes of Price is Right.
Don't forget The Young and the Restless.
That is typically reserved for the noon hour. But right now, there's an ESPN, I assume NBA insider, whom I'm not familiar with, on television talking about fans continuing to express frustrations around following Luka Doncic's trade to the Lakers for Anthony Davis in that 3-team deal a couple of days ago, last week specifically, and what it's done to Dallas Mavericks fans. There are protests going on outside of the arena. There are protests going on in Los Angeles. This is, I cannot remember a single transaction in my lifetime that's been as resoundingly panned as this one has. And there's a couple of people who are arguing that the Mavs are more contenders now without Luka this season than they were currently with Luka. But I guess that was before Anthony Davis got hurt, and that's insult to injury, the fact that Anthony Davis got hurt in his first game with the Mavs and is expected to miss a month.
What an overwhelming reaction in Dallas. The sign that I saw bobbing around was Dirk handed Luka the torch, Nico blew it out.
Oh.
Tough.
Money first, fans last.
Yeah.
Are the signs that Mavs fans are holding up. Fire Nico. I mean, he's going to get fired, right?
At the SMU game last night, a Fire Nico chant rang out. He was in attendance.
I mean, it's the most universally hated move by a front office executive by that fan base since when?
Oh, by Dallas?
Or not just Dallas specifically, but when's the last time you saw a fan base with such a strong I mean, the first thing that pops in my mind is Shiano Sunday, but that's the world that, obviously, that's just locally.
Yeah, and that's a little different, I guess, but it's kind of like you have to go to that level of outrage to talk about, because locally people would probably bring up A.J. Brown, but it wasn't like there were plenty of Titans fans that were split on that because of A.J.'s availability at the end, and plenty of people were just saying, oh, I don't want him, he's a diva, which is stupid.
Yeah, and then there was that brief point where they're 7-3 and Traylon Burks goes for 100+ in Green Bay, where, folks weren't screaming about the A.J. Brown trade. But yeah, man. And then AD gets hurt immediately.
I mean, will he be fired before the season's over, Nico Harrison?
It would depend on what they do. I mean, if they miss the playoffs, I would think certainly.
I don't know, man. I had no idea that, for example, in our world, Mike Herndon is both a Texas Longhorns fan and a Dallas Mavericks fan, and has just been tortured, and a Tennessee Titans fan, has been totally tortured by his sports existence this year, other than Texas, having a decent playoff run.
So Albert Breer just reacted to this news of Matt Patricia taking the defensive coordinator job at Ohio State.
Famously an Ohio State alum.
Yes. Wait, Albert Breer?
Yeah.
I thought he was a Michigan man.
No, very, very much. Eisen and Schefter are the Michigan guys.
That's okay.
Albert Breer is
That's
most,
right.
I think, in the sports media world, the loudest Ohio State fan.
Well, he tweeted, Matt Patricia spent a lot of time with Bill Belichick last year studying the college game with the acknowledgement that Belichick would probably bring his son Steve with him as DC if he took a college job. So instead of UNC, he lands with the reigning national champs.
Interesting.
I just wonder how Ohio State fans feel about this. Let's ring up Kirby.
I'll be spending a week with Kirby in Indianapolis before long. I'm sure I'll hear all about it.
I imagine it'll be a slightly polarizing move.
I would imagine so. Matt Patricia is kind of a polarizing person. The number one pick and its trade precedents. We'll take a look at some other trades that have been done for the number one overall selection, given that the Titans are certainly open for business. Is this year different than any other? I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. There are so many misconceptions out there when it comes to ED treatment. The Tennessee Men's Clinic is here to debunk those for you. Lots of men assume that if the pills stop working, they have no other options than irreversible surgery to treat ED. And the sad reality is that if you go to a doctor to treat ED, those may be the only protocols they have available for you. Please, before you go to such extremes, speak to the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Their experts specialize in men's sexual health issues. It's all they do. It makes them the experts in the field, and they have access to multiple protocols and options to treat ED based on your specific needs and what's going on in your body. So don't trust your health to an online pharmacy, and don't feel like you're out of options. We want you to understand all of the options available when it comes to ED treatment. The Tennessee Men's Clinic protocols are patient-centered and customized to your needs. They have treatments for everything from low testosterone, ED treatments that increase size, stamina, and everything else in between. The bottom line is no one has more expertise and experience in successfully treating men's sexual health issues than the Tennessee Men's Clinic, and they're passionate about what they do. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location, or call them 615-208-9090. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is the number. Zach Lyons brought in leftover Super Bowl party chili. And Lucas, do you even enjoy food? Because the rate at which you scarfed down that individual Tupperware-sized thing of chili, the fact that Zach is bringing in chili to a radio station for people who sit in an enclosed space for several hours at a time is
It's going to get wicked in there.
risky proposition unto itself. But the fact that you don't even bother to breathe, you were gasping for air.
I took the whole break to eat it.
No,
all right?
it didn't. Let's not
No, it
lie
didn't.
here.
I started in the break room and made my way into the studio and took the whole. And then I hit the accelerator when there was about a minute remaining in the break.
Oh,
But
lies.
Lie.
Buddy, there were 3 minutes left in the break, and I looked, and that Tupperware container was clean.
look, man.
It was sparkling.
No, I threw it out almost as the music was playing. I can't just sit here with the food just sitting next to me. It starts talking to me. I start hearing
Like the
voices.
Green Goblin mask.
It is exactly like the Green Goblin mask. I hear voices.
The Green Goblin.
I don't
Man.
have self-control.
How old is that reference?
2001.
It's a great reference.
Oh.
It's a great pull by me. That makes up for the oopsie.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Get away from the microphone.
But I don't have that self-control. You warmed it up, you dressed it up with the cheese, and you've just got it sitting there next to you for this
Yeah, because I had to talk.
20-minute segment. I can't do that.
I have things to do. I have a radio show to conduct.
Efficiency.
Not efficient. It's disgusting. It's like a python unhinging its jaw to eat a deer. It's just
Thank you.
He started drinking it at one point like it was a protein shake.
God. Anyway, the Titans own the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Did you know that? Have I said it enough yet? Are you going to get tired of that yet? I don't know. We'll see. But they do. Lucas, how many times since the NFL merger has the number 1 overall pick been traded?
Ooh, since the merger? I know 13 times. That's the amount of total
So
draft
since
picks.
1967.
Yeah.
13 times has a deal been done, one of them for the Tennessee Titans back in 2016, for the number 1 overall pick to be traded away. Obviously, the Bears most recently owned the number 1 overall pick in the 2023 draft. They then traded it for DJ Moore and 3 additional picks in the next 3 drafts. And Carolina sent them Moore, their first-round pick, which was 9th overall, a second-round pick, which was number 61, and their first-round pick in 2024 and their first and second-round pick in 24 and 25, respectively. Chicago moved up to 1, and the Panthers then drafted Bryce Young.
And that's all the Panthers got in return, was the number 1 overall pick.
Now, this year, that conversation is very interesting because it's not overwhelmingly rare to see the number 1 pick traded. We just told you the various times. Before that, it was 2016, the last time that the Titans owned the number 1 overall pick, and they traded it to the Los Angeles Rams, who ended up drafting Jared Goff. The Titans, in trading that number 1 pick, got number 15, wide receiver, which became wide receiver Corey Coleman. They ended up trading out again of that pick. They traded back up into the number 8 spot to draft Jack Conklin, but when they made the deal, it was 15. They got a 2016, 2 2016 second-round picks, a 2016 third-round pick, a 2017 first-round pick, and a 2017 third-round pick. So that 1 first-round pick, which became Jared Goff, got the Titans Austin Johnson, the defensive tackle, Derrick Henry, Corey Davis in 2017, that was the fifth overall selection, and Jonnu Smith. So 4 players who contributed at varying degrees, and Jack Conklin. Jack Conklin counts in there as well. He's not included in this particular trade because the Titans then traded back up to 8. But 4 players for the 1 pick. Now, you can debate the merits of those players, although one of them is Derrick Henry, which probably negates any ill feelings that you have about Austin Johnson or the Corey Davis experience, or should the Titans have re-signed Jonnu Smith, whatever.
Well, the Rams also got the 4th and 6th rounder from that draft.
Yeah.
As well as the number 1 overall pick. So the Rams got 3 total picks in that deal. It was a big deal. A lot of moving parts in that deal.
It was a big deal. So just looking at let's look at the most recent example. The Bears to the Panthers. So the number 1 pick, Bryce Young, for DJ Moore, number 9 overall in 2023, number 61 overall in 2023, the 2024 first-round pick that became Caleb Williams, and a 2025 second-round pick. Was that deal worth it for the Chicago Bears?
It's hard to draw that up as any sort of precedent, too, because Bryce Young was a Heisman Trophy winner and a national champion. That was a deeper quarterback class, too, so there was more urgency for the Panthers to get to the top spot and get their guy. And they were moving up from the number 9 spot. If we're looking at precedent for this year's draft, I go all the way back to 2001 when the Chargers traded out of the number 1 overall pick. The Falcons moved up to draft Michael Vick out of Virginia Tech. That was not a very deep draft class. The next quarterback off the board was Drew Brees, 2nd round. Obviously, both of those guys had pretty phenomenal careers.
Yep.
But in terms of the prospects going into that draft, not a loaded draft class when you only have 1 quarterback in the first round. So in that draft, the Chargers received the Falcons' first-round pick, which was 5th overall. When we're talking about the Titans, who do we bring up most often as a potential trade partner here?
The Giants.
Giants, right? Very close proximity. They're only 2 picks back. The Chargers were 4 picks back of the Falcons in 2001. So the Chargers the Falcons were 4 picks back of the Chargers. The Chargers had the number 1 pick. They, in exchange for the number 1 pick, received the number 5 overall pick, the Falcons' 3rd round pick, the Falcons' 2002 second round pick, so the second rounder for the next draft, and wide receiver Tim Dwight. So the pick swap plus a 3rd, a future 2nd, and a player. That's the closest sort of precedent that I can align to what this draft looks like. Not a deep quarterback class, not the sense of urgency you might have to go up and get a Bryce Young. Although, if the Giants are in any sort of desperation mode, that plays a role in this. But is that the baseline? Anything along those lines? The obvious pick swap plus 2 other picks? We know the Titans' priority is top 100 picks. Is that feasible? Pick swap and 2 top 100 picks on top of that.
Yes, I think that's feasible. I don't think relative to, I don't think this is, to your point, the most recent time we've seen this was the Carolina deal. I don't think you're getting that kind of value.
No, very different situation.
So let's start there.
In
the most
2016,
recent trade for the number 1 overall pick is not the precedent that you should use.
And neither is the last time the Titans did it in 2016, because the Rams are coming all the way up from 15. There were a lot of moving parts in that deal. Could be a lot more clear-cut this year.
Because Michael on YouTube says Shirley Ward and Shador have more hype than Goff for number 1. Not even, that was my first draft, 16. And, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but there was, again, no disputing that Jared Goff, there was a conversation about Goff or Wentz.
Yeah, Wentz went number 2.
There was a conversation there about it. And the only reason that Wentz probably didn't go 1 is because he was at North Dakota State. And Goff was at Cal. It's not like he was playing a super high level of competition. But there was 0 questions that those 2 would go 1 and 2. That is not the dialogue around this draft class.
Do you remember the other quarterback to go in the first round of that draft?
So that's 2016 in the first round?
Yeah. Played in this state and did nothing in his NFL career.
Oh, was that Paxton Lynch?
Paxton Lynch.
Paxton Lynch to the Broncos?
Yeah.
Because Jerry Jones, I guess, was trying to take Paxton Lynch and didn't ultimately end up getting there or trading up in time or something like that. Paxton Lynch. What a time. AFL legend, I think. He went to the AFL. He went to one of those.
UFL, yeah, one
like
of those.
Either way. Didn't pan out. Man. So maybe it's because Paxton Lynch was the next quarterback that there was no disputing that those were the two quarterbacks. But this year, we're not even talking about another first rounder. And there was some reason to believe, I mean, people were still doing like, oh, look at him, he's a giant. Surely he'll be good at quarterback. And then he wasn't. And he had some mobility, Paxton Lynch, but I don't know. The Broncos, he's one of many ill-fated Broncos quarterbacks over a period of 10 to 12 years. There is not the same level of dialogue around Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders that there was around Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. Now, is that fair? I'm not smart enough to tell you otherwise, but I just, hearing what talent evaluators are messaging around this quarterback class versus that one, it's not even comparable to me. If you were to acquire, so your trade, the most feasible trade is a pick swap, a first round swap, and two future top 100 picks. If you can get a player as opposed to a future top 100 pick, what player or what kind of player, what position should this team be trying to acquire? Because in the DJ Moore trade, and again, you're not getting a package that's comparable to DJ Moore. What the Bears got from the Panthers is miles away from what this trade or what this hypothetical first round pick would expect to go for.
I'm trying to figure out just what kind of caliber player Tim Dwight was, because he was the player that the Chargers received in that trade with Atlanta.
But DJ Moore. Like, DJ Moore is a number one wide receiver, somebody who Carolina misses very much. I mean, Xavier Legette has not done. Xavier Legette's kind of on a Traylon Burks trajectory as far as his production. Now, maybe that's because of the quarterback stuff there, but we'll see what happens.
Dwight was an excellent punt and kick returner and a 400 to 600 yard kind of wide receiver.
To me, an offensive tackle here would be worth a conversation. Now, I don't know how many teams are going to be willing to offer a quality offensive tackle as a part of that conversation. But that, to me, would negate the need for two future top 100 picks, because that would satisfy an immediate need. Now, of course, contract situation has to be taken into account. Did DJ Moore get a new deal when he went to Chicago?
I don't know, because he signed it on Hard Knocks this past year.
Oh, okay. So, all that to say, the draft capital is preferable. If they're going to do player compensation, an offensive lineman would make me feel a lot better about a proven offensive lineman, so that you're not leaving this, because you're basically going to have to draft a right side this year or put together a right side. We'll see what they do in free agency. We'll see what they do first and foremost there, and then what that tells us about their projected path through the draft. But they're going to have let's just say, a new right side of the offensive lineman. I would like one proven commodity to be added to that right side of the offensive line, to where you're talking about Lloyd Cushenberry, who's a veteran with experience. We'll see when he comes available, or when he becomes available coming off the Achilles. But you're talking about two very young players still in Skoronski and Latham. Latham significantly younger than Skoronski. Inexperienced, but getting more experience. Two guys who've started the bulk of their careers. I would like for there to be veteran experience on that right side, depending on how they go about acquiring it. So that, to me, I think I would take that into consideration as well.
So a pick
swap. Is that enough for Titans fans?
Yeah,
though?
if it's with the Giants, is a pick swap, and let's say a second and a future third, or a third and a future second, plus a player that can help you. Would that be too steep for the New York Giants?
Who on the Giants can help them? Certainly not an offensive lineman. You don't want any of their wide receivers. Was there any noise around Kayvon Thibodeau?
Trade noise?
Yeah.
Not that I've seen.
Okay. I feel like I remember seeing, maybe that was just one of those pro football talk rumors type of things a couple of months ago. Is that worth it to you? Let's just make it about the picks. Let's not add to the hypothetical and throw players in there. A pick swap with the Giants at 3, plus two future top 100 picks. Is that sufficient to you as a fan? Now, they'll have their own grading metrics, and whether that's sufficient to you or not, we'll see what decision they end up making. But are you good with that kind of compensation?
It 100% is to me, because if you're making that move, then you're obviously not totally convicted on one of these quarterbacks, or else you would stick and pick at one. It gives you the opportunity to still take one of the two best players in this draft in Hunter or Abdul Carter, and it gets you closer to that pace of a lofty goal, 12 top 100 picks in the next 3 years.
Somebody on YouTube says, what? Question mark? We want Neighbors. No, I'm assuming in that hypothetical that Malik Neighbors is not on offer.
I too want Malik Neighbors.
I wanted Malik Neighbors over the tackle, to be honest with you. So I'm just assuming in that situation that's where they're at. To me, I mean, based on what, again, I'm relying on people's information that are telling us publicly, whether it's Field Yates or Daniel Jeremiah, people that study the draft for a living, that don't just make a couple of months out of this, but do this year round, who talk to the people on the ground who are responsible for making these deals and these picks. The common theme is that the quarterback class is not sufficient enough to drive up the price much further than what we've just outlined. What they get done above and beyond what we've just outlined will help us determine whether they're going to be good at this or better than we expect them to be at this. But let's talk about it through this prism. The expectation, if they trade out a 1, should be a first-round swap and 2 top 100 picks.
Yes.
2 additional top 100
I
picks.
think that should be baseline.
So let's set our expectation there. How they exceed that or how they fall short of that, if they decide to trade the pick, I think is the best way to judge that. If we set our baseline expectations with the outcome, the potential outcome that we've just described, I feel okay about that. Like that deal would not bother me. I don't know how Titans fans feel about it. Many of them would just say, shut up and take the quarterback number 1, you idiot. Maybe that's what they do. Nobody's saying that you can't do that. But we have to consider all scenarios in this particular situation. And the fact that nobody knows what's going to happen at number 1, specific to the Titans, who have a quarterback need, tells you that there's no consensus on these quarterbacks.
Also, Cam Ward has not even been in the same room with these teams yet.
No, that's the other thing, a good note to point out, because I got one of those A to Z Sports Instagram questions being like, who do you think they're more likely to draft, Shedeur or Cam Ward? And I basically my answer was let's talk after the combine, because they have not met. They have not been in a room with Cam Ward yet. They've had multiple opportunities to meet with Shedeur, formally and informally, because he went to the Shrine Bowl to honestly just bring more attention to some of his Colorado teammates that were participating in the Shrine Bowl. He just went for the media stuff, which I love, by the way.
I mean, he committed to playing the Shrine Bowl. I don't know how teams.
It's kind of like
absorb that.
I'll be in the Shrine Bowl. Wink, wink. That's how I read it anyway. 615-737-1045 is the number. By the way, if you missed it earlier in the 11 o'clock hour, we have announced the live Titans draft show with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Tickets are available for as low right now as $30 at 1045thezone.com. Again, it's going to be at the Hutton Hotel in the Analog Room, which is excellent. There are VIP options as well if you would like food and beverage included in your purchase. 1045thezone.com for more information. Jonathan is up next.
Hey, guys, how you doing?
Good.
So on your conversation about what the equivalent is and draft capital, what if somebody like Vegas wants to move up from a lower spot? Does that change anything on what you could get back? And then on the Giants question, would you be okay with a pick swap, Malik Neighbors, hypothetical, obviously, and then getting maybe like a second round next year? Thanks.
Sure, I love him, Malik Neighbors. I'm just I'm assuming that's one of those untradeable again, he's on a rookie deal. I mean, like maybe New York eventually does what Kansas City did, which is, we don't want to pay a wide receiver $30 million. We'll trade him
in 3 years.
Yeah, at the end of his contract, but not now.
You have to remember, they're not very bright.
The Giants?
Yes.
Famously.
I mean, he is the most inspiring, for lack of a better word, foundational piece they have on that roster.
The only thing they have.
Well, they let the one before him go to the Eagles, so I think it's a hypothetical worth exploring.
Okay,
For sure. No, but that was a situation
Also,
where
Dexter Lawrence. They have
they have good players,
which is crazy that the Giants have better or higher star caliber players on their roster right now than the Titans do.
They have good players, but I don't think any can get you excited about the future of the franchise like a Malik Neighbors. He can be a special player.
He's it.
And you're right, Jackson, about Saquon. That was also when it came time to pay him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Malik Neighbors ain't going anywhere.
We can talk about the Raiders scenario coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So we were just discussing trade capital that would make trading out of the number one pick worth it. Now, maybe you're just hell-bent. You're less open-minded than your own franchise is about the number one overall pick. And that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But it's worth kind of considering these exercises. And an exercise that one of the callers brought up earlier was we were walking through the idea of a trade back to 3. New York Giants sitting at 3. Obvious quarterback need. Can you parlay that to your advantage, given that the Browns could take a quarterback? They could also take Abdul Carter if Myles Garrett gets moved. Something to keep in mind. The scenario that was posed was the Raiders coming up from 6. Any deal with the Raiders, I would want to involve Max Crosby. And I'm not saying that, like, if it doesn't involve Max Crosby, if they offer you like 5 first-round picks and Max Crosby's not in the deal, then okay, then fine, whatever. But Max Crosby has a potential out heading into 2025 on his contract. The cap hit for the Raiders the next 2 years is 27.9 and 24.8. You could orchestrate a restructuring of the contract, the current 4-year, $94 million deal that he's on. But if I'm trading back to 6, I want a premium player. And if I can't have Myles Garrett, who I would also be interested in trading the number, or at least feeling the Browns out for what that might look like. Myles Garrett is a great option. Max Crosby is certainly not a bad option.
Yeah, I mean, the further back you trade, the pricier the compensation.
Yep.
Right? Going back to 6 means you forfeit the ability, in all likelihood, to draft a Travis Hunter or an Abdul Carter.
Or either of the quarterbacks.
Right.
Potentially.
Obviously, you want the more teams on the phone, the better for the Tennessee Titans with this pick. Now, all of the scuttlebutt, so to speak, about this, Ian Rappaport taking to NFL Network, talking about the Titans' number one overall pick is Titans are very open to trading out of this.
Yep.
So I wonder if we see anything shifting it more towards, Titans really loved their meeting with Cam Ward. Titans are very impressed by Shedeur Sanders. I'll be interested to see what nuggets kind of come leaking out throughout the course of the process.
Yeah, and how much actually has legs versus what's just...
Because I get apprehensive about just from here until then, it being, Titans want out. They want out of this pick.
From here until the combine?
From here until the draft.
Oh, no. For me, the next checkpoint on this is the combine. Because to what you were saying earlier, Cam Ward hasn't met with the Titans. And they can do background on the player. They can't speak directly to the player until such time as they have official meetings set. But they can talk to Miami coaches. They can talk to people who he was around in high school. They can talk to people who he's got connection. Who's his cousin? Who's his cousin in the league? Doesn't he have a cousin in the league?
Cam Ward?
Yeah, in Quandre Diggs, a relation of
Really?
Yeah.
They're cousins.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
I'm pretty certain that future free agent, last year safety, Titan safety, Quandre Diggs and Cam Ward are related. Now, I don't know if they're first cousins or second cousins or whatever, but perhaps Quandre Diggs on his way out the door, if they're going to re-sign him, maybe that's a conversation too, because they have a need at safety that needs to be addressed. Could give them some due diligence or some background on Cam. And, you're going to expect that that's going to be slighted to an extent because that's family. But still, they have any number of options to help fill in some of the gaps around Cam Ward before they actually talk to the player.
If I'm the Titans, I want everyone to think that I'm in love with one of these quarterbacks.
They haven't really done that, though.
And it would take a pretty penny for me to get out of this pick and not have the chance to draft one of these quarterbacks, even if it's a complete falsehood.
Yeah, but they're not even playing that game. At least right now, they're not playing that game. Because you got Mike Borgonzi on the record saying, we want to build through the trenches.
No, everything they have said
has been anti-quarterback.
No, it has pointed to a trade out of number one overall.
Yeah, I would agree. And that does not necessarily, again, that does not mean that they can't draft a quarterback still in the first round. Because you have no idea. If Shedeur or Cam falls, how far are they going to fall? Like, did we all expect Will Levis to fall out of the first round? No. Certainly CAA didn't expect Will Levis. His representation didn't expect him to fall out of the first round. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent him to the draft. Like, we have no earthly idea where the quarterbacks are actually going to land. There are Titans fans right now out there, and I promise you, I understand you because I get that you're tired of waiting around. And this provides you the clearest path to a quarterback solution. But just don't get ahead of your skis. There's so much more of this that has to play out. Between combine, pro days, 30 visits, all of it. All of it is a part of the evaluation process.
We have a giveaway, correct?
We do.
We do. It's Winning Wednesday with Athletes Unlimited Pro Basketball. Don't miss the world-class talent and playoff intensity of Athletes Unlimited Pro Basketball. It comes to Nashville Municipal Auditorium for Season 4, started on February 5th, goes all the way through March 2nd. Stars like Alicia Clark, Sydney Colson, Lexi Brown. Tickets start as low as $20, but you can win right here.
Caller number 5, 615-737-1045. We'll win those tickets to a very exciting local event. Polls, please. Just a quick news item here before Lucas gets to the polls. Ian Rappaport has put out there on Twitter that Bengals defensive captain and leading tackler, linebacker Jermaine Pratt, has requested a trade from the team. Cincinnati has been devoting resources to keeping their offensive core together, and Pratt was close to DC Lou Anarumo, who was fired after last season. So a really good player asking for his release. Or his trade from Cincinnati.
A lot going on in Cincinnati. A lot of moving parts. He's 28 years old, coming off a career season. Polls are presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Karen says Hubert Davis saying he's just sad after another UNC blowout loss.
Well, he should be sad because of the loss and because he's probably going to get fired.
They were drilled by Clemson by 20 the other night. They were 14-12. How many SEC teams are better than Tennessee men's basketball right now? 37.6% say 3. I suppose the 3 would be Auburn and Alabama, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then either Florida or Kentucky. Kentucky's beaten you twice. You could argue about who on paper is the better team, but hard for me to put Tennessee in front of a team that's beaten them twice.
I can in good conscience put Tennessee above Kentucky after they've swept them.
And you split with Florida. You were blown out at Florida, and you won by 20 at home. So, interesting question. 23% say only 2 are better than Tennessee. 21.2% say 4. 18.2% say 5 or more. I'd be willing to say 3.
I'd say 3.
Yeah. What is the biggest storyline of the NFL offseason in 2025? We'll get to more on this tomorrow. John says, feels like the QB carousel is always the biggest storyline. Stafford, probably the quarterback domino that needs to fall first, and then Darnold, and then it begins.
Yeah, it's usually quarterback-centric. There's no reason that would change this year.
Yeah, others say Aaron Rodgers might be the biggest storyline. That is all part of that quarterback carousel. What would you consider appropriate compensation for the number 1 overall pick? Saul says, depends how far back you trade. I would not want to trade back any further than pick number 4. Brandon says, in a trade with the Raiders, Max Crosby, a 2025 first, a 2026 first, and a 2027 second and third.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Ooh, that is a steep price tag.
You might get 2 firsts in Crosby to go from 6 to 1, but yeah, beyond that, I would be surprised.
Joe says compensation of the first-round pick, second-round pick, and at least one 2026 pick. John says for a trade back with the Giants, Titans receive the 3rd pick, a 2025 third, and a 2026 first.
That's a pretty reasonable deal.
Yeah, if you could squeeze another first out of that.
Well, certainly given that the Chiefs own your 3rd.
Those are the polls.
Don't feel great about that. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Primetime tonight. At 7 p.m., we'll dive more into that particular subject matter regarding the Titans in a trade. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Blaine and Zach are next.